I have the pleasure of introducing Kevin Richardson. Let's give him a warm round of applause, please. Thank you, Kevin.
All right. Good morning. As you just heard, my name is Kevin Richardson. Thank you for inviting me to speak here this morning. And the talk I'd like to give to you is called Minding the Gap: Evolution, Technology, and Innovation. First, just a couple of notes about me. Right, I started doing user experience work back in 1991, and I am not a technical guy. I have some understanding of the limits of technology, but I don't code. Right, UX research, UX design is what I do. And currently, I'm the Director of User Experience at Infragistics in our office in the United States. If you would like to get in touch with me, you can find me on Twitter at KHR_UX. Or if you'd like to send me email, you can reach me at krichardson@infragistics.com. All right. Like all good stories, mine this morning starts at the beginning. Although, unlike most stories, mine starts at the absolute very beginning. Human beings have evolved very slowly. It has taken us millions of years to get to the point where we are today. And for those millions of years, our technology has evolved right along with us. This is some of our earliest tech. Like us, it improved incrementally over hundreds of thousands of years. From the left-hand side stone tool to the right-hand side stone tool is 900,000 years of incremental improvement. And there are several reasons for this, right? Population density, social factors, the slow evolution of the human brain. But there is one factor that I'd like to talk about today, and that's design. Consider this. Early in our evolution, the decision to create or improve technology was made by the user of that technology. And the making of that technology was made by the same person. So one individual is responsible for deciding, designing, and creating technological products for him or herself. As a result, our earliest technology was very personal. I create or improve a thing because I decide to. And the results of my work are almost by definition going to be useful to me. And in this way, people and technology evolved together over millions of years until about the middle of our modern era. And at that point, something completely different happened. For our purposes, that completely different thing was the invention of the transistor. In 1947, this first transistor was large enough to sit on top of a desktop. By 1954, 7 years later, it was small enough to make possible personal transistor radios. You could carry your music with you. And you could also now have radios in cars, which had never been done before. There are certain things that just aren't good with vacuum tubes. By 1959, they were small enough you could fit 10 of them on a computer chip. And by 2015, IBM had introduced its first 7-nanometer chip, which contained 20 billion, with a B, transistors. From an evolutionary point of view, that much advancement in that short a period of time was unheard of. To put things into perspective, since 1947, you and I have not evolved one tiny little bit from a relative point of view. Technology, on the other hand, has evolved since then almost exponentially. Our technology now is so intricate, its ability to process information is so great that our poor human cognitive and perceptual capabilities, honed over millions of years, pales in comparison. And here's the key point, right? Because our technology is now so complex, it requires teams of specially trained individuals to design and develop complex technological products for much larger groups of non-technical people outside this room. Once that happened, once the evolution of people and technology diverged, our technology stopped being personal. And by that, I don't mean customizable, right? I mean that it's no longer realistic to imagine that a single individual can decide, design, and develop complex technology for themselves. So what, right? What difference does it make if technology is personal or it's not personal? The reason it matters is because outside this room, there are entire millions of people for whom technology is so complicated that they don't even expect to understand it. It's enough for them simply to know how to use a thing.
Okay. The X10s are online.
Gentlemen, I am now about to send a signal from this laptop through our local ISP, racing down fiber optic cable at the speed of light to San Francisco, bouncing off a satellite in geosynchronous orbit to Lisbon, Portugal, where the data packets will be handed off to submerged transatlantic cables terminating in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and transferred across the continent via microwave relays back to our ISP and the X10 receiver attached to this lamp.
Look at me, I've got goosebumps.
Are we ready on the stereo?
Go for stereo.
Hey guys!
Hello.
It's a little loud.
No problem. Turning it down. San Francisco, Lisbon, Halifax. Et voila.
Okay, thanks.
The devices and the interfaces that we take for granted are as complicated and difficult to understand to the regular person as the latest cell phone is to your grandmother. And if you don't believe me, let me show you some examples in a moment. Okay. This is an airplane cockpit. Traditionally, airplane cockpits have been considered one of the most technically complex working environments that people have ever created. And generations of scientists and engineers and user experience people have devoted their careers to making them simpler and safer for pilots and for the people who fly with them. Yet 90% of all general aviation accidents are still attributed to pilot error. Business software like this keeps me and my team busy all year long. Companies spend upwards of $2,000 US to train employees to use poorly designed software. And that doesn't even take into account the amount of productive time lost because of that. Apple, everybody believes, creates some of the most usable devices around, yet the iPhone has all sorts of hidden functionality. Because of that, Apple pays about 8 million euros each year to pay the salaries of Apple Store geniuses whose only job is to teach you how to use their products. And then finally, this is the software that controls slot machines in many of the world's casinos, probably including the one downstairs. It takes 2 weeks of training to learn how to use the basic functionality in order to set up and maintain a slot machine. I mean, look at this. It's a disaster. Who does 3 rows of tabs? Not only is it 3 rows of tabs, but notice each row is able to shift left and right to show hidden tabs. And this is a touchscreen interface. The business world is aware of this problem. We, the software community, are aware of this problem. And in noticing this problem, we have noticed that there is a single common denominator that runs through all instances of this problem. That common denominator is people. That's right. We are the problem with bad software. The question then becomes, if you believe that, how do we solve the problem of people? Historically, we've attempted to address this gap between people and technology by forcing people to serve the needs of that technology. We force the people to adapt, and that means training. Organizations have always relied on training as a way to force people to act correctly. And notice the implication there, that people, if only they could be shown how, would not be wrong, that we could teach them how to be right. Complicated machines with a lot of controls, what do? Training. You have a time management software in your office that nobody seems to be using correctly? Training. You have an in-car entertainment system and you can't figure out how to hook up your Bluetooth? Training. But training takes a lot of time, it's very expensive, and it really leads only to marginal improvements in performance. And when you're done with all that, you're still left with hard-to-use technology. So you're committed to a constant program of training forever. All right, so if training isn't the answer, maybe usability testing is. That's my background way back when I started. So usability testing means that we, as the technology community, are now forced to admit, grudgingly, that perhaps our applications might be made just a little bit easier to use for people. Okay, we'll give you that much. So people like me show up, we take the application, we put it in front of a group of people, and we test it. We figure out where they have problems, we make recommendations on how to improve it, and generally we put down industry-level salaries for doing academic-style work, and we all walk away happy. Does that fix the problem? Not fundamentally, no. I mean, yes, doing usability testing does make products a little bit easier to use, depending on how much of those recommendations get rolled back into the product. It does decrease the need for training, but at its core level, you're left with the same problems that you had initially. Okay, at this point, I hope we can all admit that people probably are not the problem here. But if you take people out of the equation, what's left must be the cause. And what's left is, unfortunately, the technology itself. So the question then becomes, how do we deal with the problem of technology? I would suggest that in order to create a useful and usable technology, what's necessary is to change the way in which technology is designed. We need to make technology personal again, and that leads to 2 things. First, we need to adapt technology to people. This means taking advantage of what people do well from an evolutionary point of view. Right? People are very good at recognizing differences between things. We are very good at applying what we have learned previously to new situations. We are very good at paying attention to one thing, regardless of what anyone might tell you about their ability to multitask. And we are very good at keeping about 7 plus or minus 2 items in working memory, short-term memory. It also means avoiding what people do poorly. We are very bad at recalling previously learned information. We are not very good at all at paying attention to multiple things going on at the same time, and we are absolutely horrible at trying to keep 9 or more items in working memory at the same time. The second thing is to allow the technology to be defined by the people for whom we are designing. I do not mean going out and asking people what they want. Oftentimes, what people need is different than what they want, and what people know is what they know. Right? And to get at what will best serve their needs oftentimes is not what you get by asking them what they would like. It also doesn't mean placing people in the role of designer or technologist. We can't go back to the good old stone tool days and expect that a single person is going to be able to design and develop complex technological solutions for themselves anymore. It just doesn't fit not only within our complex technology, but it doesn't fit within our current business model of how we build things for large groups of people. To successfully and consistently bridge the gap between people and technology requires a systematic process that evolves our relationship with technology and makes us partners rather than users. Simply focusing on the term user means that we are not in control, we are not part of the thing we are sitting in front of. Luckily, this is not complicated, and it's not new. Both of those requirements can be handled by the process of design that we use today. Design coordinates people's known requirements, which are what they want, with their latent requirements, which is what they need, with business requirements, and the technological constraints placed on it by the particular platform that we're building on. Design then becomes the means through which technology is adapted to us, taking advantage of our evolutionary strengths and allowing people to accomplish their goals with only minimal attention paid to the technology that makes it possible. I'm not going to try and teach you design this morning, but if you boil it down to a phrase, design is understanding what people are trying to accomplish. And user experience design is trying to understand what people are trying to accomplish through their interaction with a particular interface. And yes, I said this just now. Now, there is someone in this room who's saying to themselves, yeah, but I'm not a designer. Right? This is not what I do for a living. I don't see how this relates to me. I mean, it's cool and all. I like sitting here. This is an interesting topic. But really, how is this going to benefit me? And to that person and to the rest of you in the room, I tell you sincerely, you are already a designer. In fact, because you are a technologist, you are more of a designer than most people. You are already probably asking the question, what are you trying to accomplish? And that's the question that good designers always default to ask. And if you don't believe me, I can prove it. Let me see a show of hands, please. Who has encountered this request from some relative? Yeah, right? At some point, your grandmother is going to corner you at some family party and say, can you help me do this? And if she hasn't asked you 4 times in the past hour, you will probably sit down next to her and ask a question like, Grandma, what are you trying to do? Because this is a very generic question. The answer to that question will allow you to define a solution appropriate to meeting her need. It will allow you to understand whether or not she's trying to simply get the pictures off her phone so she has more room for other pictures, if she wants to put pictures on the internet so she can share them with other people in the family, or maybe she wants to get them off the phone so that she can edit them, right? Understanding what she's trying to accomplish will allow you to decide the right course of action. It will allow you to figure out whether or not she needs Photoshop or Facebook, and it will allow you to step through the individual tasks required to accomplish her goals. That's exactly what UX people do. It's exactly what designers do. Now, since you're already a designer, I need you to do a couple of things for me. I need you to start recognizing that situation. It happens all the time. And when it happens, I need you to start asking those correct questions. What are you trying to accomplish? And I need you to start asking them all the time. I need you to see the gap between what people need and what technology is forcing them to do, and fix it. And if everything I have said here this morning isn't enough to make you want to jump up and go do that, consider this one last fact. In not that many years, fewer than you would imagine, you will be that grandparent relying on some kid to help you do something they think is stupidly easy. Do something about it now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. It's always a pleasure having you here. And one of your slides struck me. It seems like you're pushing people to be part of the solution for this. And but what they say is, if you cannot be part of the solutions, there is good money to be made as being prolonging the problem.
I don't think we need any help prolonging the problem. I think that has done quite well for itself without our involvement.
Would you like to do some Q&A?
Yeah, please. Any questions?
Any microphones in the room? No.
Microphone, but no question.
There is one in the front.
Good. I'll take a picture of you guys. Smile. Nice.
Hello?
Yes.
So we are dealing with industry and budgets. That's a known fact.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is a single person who you target to change the mentality of a corporation that has such issues, who would you talk to?
In general, I would start with product owners, product managers, people in charge of products. And the reason I say that is because those individuals have a stake in the success of a particular thing, right? In the US, we say they have skin in the game. Because if it fails, the person in charge of the company is going to go to that person and say, you built something that failed. So they are much more likely to want to do whatever it takes to create a successful product than to hope that it's just going to turn out all right in the end. Other questions? Is there a question in the back?
Yes, there is a question in the back.
Way in the back. Couldn't be further in the back. Half a meter, he'd be outside. Keep going.
All the way down.
Hi. It sounds really good to be not users but partners to the big players, for example, Microsoft, but how to fight them, how to stop Microsoft to force us with their updates constantly when we shut down the computer.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you can do with Microsoft. But to be honest, right, look at the difference between Microsoft and Apple, two large producers of technology products. And it is obvious that there is a clear philosophical difference between the way those two companies view the world. Microsoft sees the world through an engineering lens. Apple sees the world through an experience lens. And that drives you to do certain things. Microsoft looks to provide things that are incredibly feature-rich, which is not bad in and of itself. But because they don't have any understanding of how to present that information to users, they don't care necessarily about what people are trying to accomplish. What they're left with is giving you all of the functionality all of the time to all of the people, which is what gives you those huge ribbons and drop-down menus that infest their products. You know, we tend to think, okay, Microsoft Word, not that bad, PowerPoint, not that bad, Excel, not that bad. They're terrible. They're terrible, terrible things. But we have spent our entire lives learning how to use them. So to us, yeah, we've kind of learned to work around it. Do you use all of the functionality? Hell no. Do you even know what the functionality is? Hell no. But I know how to do the things I need to do because I have spent years figuring it out. And even then, I learned not too long ago about that little paintbrush tool where you can copy the formatting of one thing and apply it to something else. I had been doing that manually for like 20 years. It was always there. So, yeah, sorry, that was a long, that was a long rant to what was probably a very simple question.
If while someone else is thinking of a question, I have one actually. It seems I had a talk yesterday about IoT and the security mess that is happening there, and there are a number of messes in that. But it seems to me the example you gave with the slot machine and the configuration interface, these were never meant probably for end users. These were meant for the professionals that would maintain the machines. And that seemed to be true up to a point. But now all of these companies, the companies who produce washing machines that are internet enabled and other appliances, they're going mainstream. These devices are getting in the hands of end users, of consumers. And their ugly interfaces do get exposed. How do we do with that? I know that I've seen some people in the audience working with companies with that are very strong on the hardware and the regular machine usability, that they've been doing that for 20 years. They're experts, but they're probably not the experts on software usability. How do we tackle that problem?
Think about this. Should there be a difference between the person who works for a company and uses the software as part of their job, and the person who doesn't work for the company and uses the software because it has been part of the thing they purchased? Historically, we have considered those two as separate audiences. Employees, we don't care about, right? They can deal with whatever software we give them because they have to. It's what they're being paid to do. Is that right? Absolutely not. In fact, it's wrong enough that because we've made that decision, we've had to pay for all sorts of training. If we had a world in which we treated all users of technology alike, we would never think it was okay to spend $2,000 a year and a week's worth of time, or in the case of the software that runs the slot machine, 80 hours worth of time spent for training. We would make software for everyone that was easily understood and easy to use. So the fact that we now are confronted with companies who have never thought of user experience, not because they've never had users, but because they've never had users that they care about, whose money could be spent on somebody else's product instead of theirs, shows you the problem that we have built for ourselves. If you consider all users to be the same, then it's obvious. What you need to do is adapt technology to them, make them part of the design process, and you don't have to worry about usability testing. Yes, there are certain aspects of the mechanics of design that you need to be concerned about. Does the button go here or here? Is the difference in brightness between the text and the background sufficient for readability? Are touch target size large enough for the average adult thumb, right? Yeah, these are all usability sorts of things. But in terms of overall design, what you are left with, if you include users who are part of the company or who are part of your sell-to audience, you get something that everyone will be able to use, everyone will find useful right away. And, you know, not only just what a wonderful world that would be, but think of all the money you as a company would save if you simply adopted that attitude. Yes, Apple spends 8 million euros a year on their Genius Bar, but their products are pretty good. Good enough that they are making billions of dollars every year, so they throw 8 million euros worldwide at, you know, Apple Store geniuses. It's a minor thing. Could they save 8 million? Yeah, they could. They don't have to hide stuff the way they do. But, you know, that's a topic for another time, the engineering-fication of Apple. But at the moment, they're still pretty good.
And sorry, there is a question.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to follow up, but I'll do so later.
Okay.
So do you believe that maybe the key to bridging this gap could lie in fundamentally changing our mindset and company cultures within the enterprises that we work, so that we kind of are able to bridge this gap between people and technology?
The short answer is yes, right? If companies who are now beginning to realize the impact of poor design on sales were able to internalize that and see the impact of poor design on internal employee behavior, time and cost savings, morale, career longevity, there would be no doubt in my mind that companies would improve internally and externally overnight. It only takes the decision to do that.
I would probably leave it at that, but I was going to say, is there something as going over the gap? I mean, too simplifying something. Have you seen in your practice going too far?
To make things
too easy.
Too easy?
Is there such a thing?
I have never seen things made too easy. You know, if you involve users in the process, what you begin to understand are their needs 80% of the time and their more advanced, specialized needs that happen only occasionally. We did a project recently where we redesigned the software that controls atomic force microscopes. Very complicated process. It has all sorts of crazy functionality that I didn't even begin to understand. But it became very obvious after you saw the way people work that many of the tasks they do used a core set of functionality that you could design for. You could make it obvious. If you've just done this, the next thing you're probably going to want to do is this. And if you need the advanced features of this, they're here right behind it. So you can design for complexity while allowing a relatively simple interface. Too simple? No. Too complex? All the time.
Thank you, Kevin. And please, let's thank our speaker. Always glad to see you.
Thank you very much.